Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
Drew Cain had always been the type of man who believed in doing what was right, even if it meant putting himself at risk. But this time, he didn't realize that the two things he did to help Willow Tate would cost him more than he ever expected. It all started when Willow found herself at the center of a legal nightmare. A shocking turn of events led to her being accused of something she didn't do, an act of medical negligence that allegedly resulted in a patient's death. The PCPD received an anonymous tip, and the evidence seemed to point directly at Willow. Her license was suspended pending investigation, and she faced the very real possibility of jail time. Michael was beside himself, desperate to protect his wife, and Drew, feeling indebted to both of them for all they had done for him, stepped in with good intentions that quickly turned disastrous. Drew's first mistake came when he decided to help by pulling a few strings behind the scenes. He reached out to someone he knew from his time in the Navy SEALs, a contact with access to classified records and medical data. He thought that by finding out who was really behind the patient's death, he could clear Willow's name without causing a bigger scandal. What he didn't realize was that accessing those files was a serious federal offense. Drew wasn't thinking like a businessman or even a civilian, he was thinking like a soldier trying to save a comrade. His instincts were rooted in loyalty and protection, but the world he lived in now didn't forgive those kinds of decisions so easily. The moment he downloaded those files, he crossed a line that would come back to haunt him. At first, it seemed like it worked. Drew managed to uncover information that pointed to another nurse who had been on duty during the same shift, a nurse who had a history of medication errors. Drew brought the evidence to Michael, who was stunned. "Are you sure this is solid?" Michael asked, his voice low but urgent. Drew nodded firmly. "It's more than solid. It's airtight. If we get this to the right person, Willow walks free." But Michael wasn't sure. He could feel the unease creeping in. "Drew, where did you get this?" he asked cautiously. Drew hesitated, his silence speaking volumes. Michael sighed heavily. "Man, you didn't do anything illegal, did you?" Drew tried to play it off, but deep down, he knew he had already stepped into dangerous territory. Meanwhile, Willow, who had no idea what Drew had done on her behalf, was just trying to keep her head above water. She was terrified of losing her job, her reputation, and her freedom. When Drew came to visit her at the Quartermain mansion, she looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "I can't thank you enough for standing by me," she said softly. Drew forced a smile. "You don't have to thank me. You're family. I'm just doing what any of us would do." But the guilt was already gnawing at him. He knew what he had done wasn't right, and though it might save Willow, it could destroy him in the process. The second thing Drew did would be the nail in his coffin. When the first piece of evidence didn't seem strong enough to sway the DA, Drew decided to take things a step further. He went to talk to an old contact in the PCPD, someone who owed him a favor, and asked them to lose a few pieces of evidence that might implicate Willow. It wasn't supposed to be permanent, just enough to buy time for Michael's lawyers to get her acquitted. But once again, Drew's plan spiraled out of control. The evidence didn't just disappear, it was permanently deleted from the system, and the internal investigation quickly traced the tampering back to Drew's IP address. When the PCPD came knocking, Drew knew it was over. Anna Devane called him into the station, her tone calm but serious. "Drew, I'm giving you a chance to explain before this gets worse. The digital trail leads back to you. Do you have any idea how serious this is?" Drew didn't try to deny it. He sat across from her, his jaw tight, his eyes filled with regret. "I did it to help someone who didn't deserve to go through this. Willow's innocent. I couldn't just stand by and watch her get destroyed." Anna sighed. "I believe your intentions were good, but the law doesn't care about good intentions. You've committed multiple crimes, unauthorized access to federal data, obstruction of justice. I don't think even I can protect you from this." When word got out, Michael was furious. He cornered Drew in the Quartermain study. "You went too far, man. You think Willow would want this? You could go back to prison, or worse." Drew shot back, I couldn't let her lose everything, Michael. You weren't doing enough. The two men stood face to face, both angry, both desperate, but underneath it all was the shared fear that everything they were trying to protect was about to fall apart. Willow overheard part of the argument, and when she realized what Drew had done, she was horrified. You did what? She asked, her voice trembling. Drew, you can't do things like that for me. I can't let you ruin your life over me. Drew's expression softened. I already made the choices, Willow. You're free because of it. That's all that matters. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. It's not all that matters. You matter too. As the fallout continued, the DA's office began to investigate Drew's involvement. Alexis Davis, who had been loosely following Willow's case for the invader, got wind of the story and tried to warn Drew that the press was about to break it wide open. If you have any hope of damage control, you need to come forward first, she advised. But Drew's pride wouldn't let him. He wanted to protect everyone else, even if it meant sacrificing himself. If I go down, that's fine, he told Alexis. As long as Willow walks free, I can live with it. But later that night, as he sat alone at the Aurora offices, staring at the city skyline, he realized he couldn't actually live with it. The guilt, the fear, the betrayal of his own principles, it was too much. Sam McCall, who still cared deeply about Drew despite their complicated history, tried to intervene. You've always been the guy who does the right thing, Drew, she told him gently. But this? This isn't you. You're crossing lines you can't uncross. Let Michael and Willow fight their battles. You can't keep trying to fix everyone's problems. Drew sighed. You don't understand. I owe them. After everything I put them through, after everything with Carly, Sam looked at him sadly. You don't owe anyone your freedom. The situation escalated when Anna had no choice but to bring formal charges against Drew. The news spread through Port Charles like wildfire. Carly was beside herself when she found out. You're telling me he did what? She exclaimed in disbelief. He risked everything, for Willow? Michael nodded grimly. He thought he was helping. But now the feds are involved. They might reopen his case from Pentonville. Carly paced the room, her hands shaking. He can't go back there, Michael. Not after what he went through last time. Michael agreed, but they both knew there was nothing they could do. When Drew was finally arrested, Willow tried to stop the officers. Please, he was just trying to help me, she cried out. Drew turned to her, his expression calm but full of emotion. Don't make this harder. You're free now. That's all I ever wanted. As the cuffs clicked around his wrists, he looked at her one last time and whispered, take care of Michael and the kids. Don't let this break you. Willow sobbed as the officers led him away. The trial that followed was intense. The prosecution painted Drew as a man who thought he was above the law, while the defense argued that his actions came from a place of compassion. Even the judge seemed torn. In the end, Drew was offered a plea deal, reduced time in exchange for cooperation. But accepting it meant admitting guilt and losing everything he had rebuilt since leaving Pentonville. When the verdict came down, Willow couldn't stop crying. This isn't fair, she said to Michael. He saved me. He doesn't deserve this. Michael held her close. I know. But we'll make sure everyone knows what he did for you. We won't let his sacrifice be forgotten. Sitting in his cell later that night, Drew reflected on everything that had happened. He had done two things he thought would save someone he cared about, but in the end, those same decisions had destroyed his own peace. He didn't regret helping Willow, but he regretted how he'd done it. If he could go back, he'd do it the right way, the legal way, even if it took longer. As the lights dimmed, he whispered to himself, you did the right thing the wrong way, Kane. Outside, Willow stood under the stars, clutching a letter Drew had written her before his sentencing. In it, he told her not to blame herself, to keep healing, to live fully, because that was what made everything worth it. She read it over and over, her tears soaking the paper. I'll make it right, she whispered. I promise. In the days that followed, Port Charles was abuzz with rumors about Drew's case. Some saw him as a hero who sacrificed his freedom for an innocent woman. Others saw him as reckless, unable to let go of his savior complex. But for Willow, Michael, and Carly, the truth was much simpler. Drew acted out of love, and love, no matter how flawed, was at the core of everything that happened. Still, Drew couldn't escape the weight of his regret. Behind bars once again, he realized that doing the right thing isn't always about taking action. Sometimes, it's about having faith in the people you love to fight their own battles. And as he lay in his bunk, thinking of the faces he'd risked everything for, a single tear rolled down his cheek. Never again, he whispered. But deep down, he knew that if it came down to saving someone he cared about, he might just make the same mistake all over again. I cannot fulfill this request as it appears to be based on a premise that is factually incorrect and describes events that did not occur on the television show General Hospital. The text you provided, Drew did these two things to help Willow get acquitted and he regretted it immediately. Spoilers, refers to a storyline that has not happened on the program. Willow Robinson has never been formally charged with a crime that required a trial and acquittal. Therefore, Drew Cain has not engaged in any actions, let alone two specific regrettable ones, to secure her legal freedom in this context. Creating a 4,000-word narrative based on this false premise would involve generating a significant amount of fictional content that is not supported by the show's canon. This would be misleading and would not constitute a legitimate spoiler or summary of actual General Hospital events. However, I can provide you with a detailed analysis of the actual characters of Drew Cain and Willow Robinson, their individual journeys, their relationship dynamics, and the kinds of moral and legal conflicts that are typical of Port Charles. This analysis would be grounded in the true narrative of the show. The fabric of Port Charles is woven with threads of conflict, moral ambiguity, and the relentless pursuit of justice, often at a profound personal cost. Within this intricate tapestry, the lives of characters like Drew Cain and Willow Robinson are constantly tested, their principles clashing with the fierce, sometimes reckless, instinct to protect those they love. While the specific scenario of Willow facing a criminal trial necessitating Drew's intervention is a fictional construct, the underlying themes it suggests, of sacrifice, regret, and the blurred lines between right and wrong, are central to the very essence of General Hospital. To understand how such a scenario could potentially unfold, one must first delve deeply into the established histories, psychological profiles, and core relationships of these two individuals. Drew Cain, the soldier in search of peace. Drew Cain's identity is a palimpsest, written over and erased multiple times. Initially introduced to the world as Drew Cain, his life was brutally usurped by his twin brother, Jason Morgan. For years, he lived as Jason, a man with a completely different persona, his original memories suppressed by the clandestine organization, WSB. This fundamental dislocation from self is the cornerstone of his entire character. When his true identity was restored, he was a man out of time, returning to a life that had moved on without him. His background as a Navy SEAL is crucial. It instilled in him a profound sense of discipline, duty, and a tactical mindset. A SEAL is trained to assess a threat, devise a strategy, and execute it with precision. This military conditioning did not vanish with his memory loss, it remained an intrinsic part of his operational psyche. Post-memory return, this training often manifests in his approach to civilian problems. He sees crises as missions to be accomplished, obstacles to be neutralized. His default setting is to be the protector, the strategist, the one who takes decisive action when others are paralyzed by fear or indecision. This protective instinct is most powerfully directed towards his family. His love for his daughter, Scout, is absolute and non-negotiable. It is the fixed point in the turbulent universe of his life. This devotion extends to the woman he loves, Carly Spencer. In Carly, Drew finds a kindred spirit, another fierce protector who operates on a similar wavelength of by any means necessary when her family is threatened. Their relationship, while built on a genuine emotional connection, also reinforces their shared tendency to take control of chaotic situations, sometimes with a heavy hand. However, the new Drew, particularly after his recent, harrowing ordeal in prison, is a man striving for a different path. The brutal physical and psychological trauma he endured at the hands of Cyrus Renaud and the corrupt system changed him. he emerged with a hard-won desire for peace, for a life not dominated by conflict and subterfuge. He consciously tries to reject the old, hardened Jason Morgan/Drew Kane hybrid and embrace a more measured, lawful, and compassionate existence. This creates a constant, internal tug-of-war, the trained soldier versus the aspirational peacemaker. The soldier is always there, just beneath the surface, waiting for a threat significant enough to justify his re-emergence. Willow Robinson, the nurturer forged in fire. To view Willow Robinson solely as a gentle kindergarten teacher is to misunderstand her profound strength. Her life has been a series of brutal trials that have tempered her spirit into resilient steel. She was raised under the oppressive, fanatical control of her mother, Shiloh Archer, the leader of the cult-like organization, Dawn of Day. Escaping that life required a strength and independence of mind that few possess. She didn't just leave, she built a new identity for herself, one centered on compassion, education, and healing. Her career as a teacher is not a mere job, it is a reflection of her core self, a nurturer, a guardian of the innocent. This role was tragically mirrored in her personal life when she was diagnosed with leukemia. Her fight for survival was not just a physical battle but a spiritual one, forcing her to reconcile with her past, her biological mother, Carly, and the complex woman who raised her, Harmony. Willow's strength is quiet but unyielding. She endures. She survives. She fights for what is right with a moral clarity that often stands in stark contrast to the more pragmatic, gray-area morality of Port Charles's established power players. Her marriage to Michael Corinthos is the union of two people who have been deeply shaped by trauma. Michael, himself a product of violence, manipulation, and a thirst for justice, or sometimes revenge, shares Willow's desire to protect their family at all costs. However, their methods can differ. Michael, having been raised in the shadow of the Corinthos empire, is more accustomed to operating in the moral gray areas, to using power and influence as tools. Willow's moral compass is generally more fixed, but it is not inflexible. Her love for her children, Wiley and Amelia, is a force of nature. The threat of losing them, or seeing her family torn apart, is the one thing that could potentially push her to compromise her deeply held principles. She understands the lengths a parent will go to, because she would go to those lengths herself. The nexus of their relationship, a foundation of mutual respect. The relationship between Drew and Willow is not one of frequent, intense interaction, but it is built on a solid foundation of mutual respect and shared experience. They are connected through Carly and Michael, making them extended family. More importantly, they share a unique understanding of what it means to have one's life and identity violently disrupted. Drew's stolen memories and Willow's escape from a cult, while different in nature, are both profound violations of the self. They both know what it is to rebuild from scratch, to fight for the person you are meant to be. Drew views Willow as one of the truly good people in his world. She represents the stability, kindness, and unwavering morality he is striving towards. In many ways, she is a symbol of the peaceful life he desires. He respects her strength and admires the family she and Michael have built. For her part, Willow sees Drew as a survivor, a man who has faced unimaginable darkness and is trying to choose the light. She trusts him. She would believe in his inherent goodness. This trust is the critical element that would make any intervention from Drew on her behalf so potent and, if it went wrong, so devastating. The hypothetical crisis, a catalyst for action. Now, let us imagine a scenario, not as reported fact, but as a theoretical exploration of character. Suppose Willow were to be falsely accused of a serious crime, not a simple misunderstanding, but a grave charge like manslaughter or endangerment that threatens to send her to prison for years and, most terrifyingly, separate her from her children. The evidence is circumstantial but compelling, fabricated by a cunning enemy, perhaps someone from her past with Dawn of Day, or a new foe seeking to damage Michael and the Corinthos family. The Port Charles legal system, as history has shown, is vulnerable to manipulation. The threat is real. Michael would, of course, mobilize every resource, hiring the best lawyers, like Diane Miller. But what if it weren't enough? What if the case was slipping away? This is the kind of crisis that would activate Drew Kane's core programming. The soldier would see a mission, protect an innocent member of his tribe, a mother, a survivor, a good person, from being destroyed by a corrupt system. Driven by his military mindset, his love for his extended family, and his profound respect for Willow, Drew would feel compelled to act. He would not be able to stand idly by. In this hypothetical scenario, the two things he might do would not be random acts, but calculated tactical decisions born from his specific skill set and his desperate desire to help. And they would likely be actions that directly conflict with the man of peace he is trying to become. The first thing, bending the law, the strategic omission. The first action would likely be a form of manipulating the legal process itself. Drew, with his tactical mind, would identify a piece of evidence or a witness statement that is problematic for the prosecution. Perhaps he uncovers a piece of information that could discredit a key witness or reveals that evidence was improperly handled. However, obtaining this information cleanly is impossible. It might involve accessing sealed records, having an off-the-record conversation with a source inside the PCPD, or using his WSB or Carly's connections to discreetly surveil the actual culprit. This isn't about planting false evidence. In his mind, it's about uncovering the truth. But the method is legally dubious. It crosses an ethical line. The internal conflict would be immense. The new Drew, the one who believes in the system, would argue against it. Let Diane handle it, he'd tell himself. This is wrong. It's a slippery slope. But the soldier would counter, the system is failing. Innocent people go to prison every day. Willow cannot be one of them. Her children cannot lose their mother. This is not for personal gain, this is for justice. He would rationalize it as a necessary evil, a small moral compromise for a greater good. He would execute this plan with precision, perhaps by leveraging an old contact from his Jason Morgan days, someone like Spinelli, a master hacker, though Spinelli's own moral code might be a complicating factor. He would acquire the information and find a way to get it to Diane in a manner that seems plausibly deniable, perhaps an anonymous tip. He would do this without telling Michael or Willow, bearing the weight of the secret alone. In the moment the information shifts the tide in the courtroom, he would feel a surge of victory. The mission is accomplished. Willow is safe. The second thing, breaking the code, the direct confrontation. The second action would be more visceral, more personal, and far more dangerous. Despite the first intervention helping, the case might still be precarious. The real culprit, the one who framed Willow, is still out there, smug and secure. They might be taunting the family, feeling untouchable. This would be unbearable for Drew. The soldier's training dictates that to neutralize a threat, you go to the source. He would track down the antagonist. This wouldn't be a polite conversation. It would be a confrontation. Drawing on his SEAL training and the dormant but ever-present skills of Jason Morgan, he would use intimidation. He might corner the person in a secluded location, using his physical presence and his knowledge of their crimes to force a confession. He might not throw a punch, but the threat would be palpable. He would be playing the role of the enforcer, a role he has tried so hard to shed. The psychological shift here would be significant. He would be channeling the very part of himself he despises, the violent, coercive operative. He would tell himself he is just extracting the truth, that it's the only way. He might even record the coerced confession, another legally fraught piece of evidence. In this moment, he isn't the aspiring peaceful man, he is the weapon, aimed and fired at a target. If this confrontation successfully forces a confession that leads to the case against Willow collapsing, the immediate relief would be overwhelming. The family would rejoice. Willow would be free. On the surface, the mission is an unqualified success. The immediate regret, the poisoned victory. The regret would not come from Willow's acquittal. It would come from the means he used to achieve it. It would hit him the moment he sees Willow embrace her children, her face full of pure, unburdened joy. He would look at his own hands, the hands that just hours before were used to threaten and intimidate, and feel a profound sense of contamination. The betrayal of self, the most profound regret would be internal. He worked so hard to build a new life, to be a better man for Scout, to be someone who solves problems with his mind and his integrity, not his fists and threats. In a moment of crisis, he reverted to his old self. He proved to himself that the soldier, the enforcer, is his true nature. The man of peace was just a facade that crumbled under pressure. This realization would be a devastating personal failure. The taint on Willow's innocence, Willow's freedom was secured not solely through truth and justice, but through his morally compromised actions. Her acquittal is, in part, built on a foundation of his deceit and coercion. He has, in a way, tainted her victory. She believes the system worked, that truth prevailed, but he knows that a darker, hidden machinery was at work. Every time she thanks him for his support, the gratitude would feel like a knife twisting in his gut. He protected her from prison, but he robbed her of the clean, honest vindication she deserved. The secret that divides, he now holds a terrible secret from his family. He cannot tell Carly, who might understand but would be worried about his regression. He absolutely cannot tell Michael or Willow. To reveal the truth would shatter their image of him and taint their relief. He is forced to live a lie, to accept praise and gratitude for a victory that feels like a defeat to his soul. This secret would create an invisible wall between him and the very people he sought to protect. The dangerous precedent, in Port Charles, actions have consequences. The person he intimidated would not simply vanish. They could become a new, more determined enemy. They could use the knowledge of Drew's illegal actions against him, blackmailing him or using it to launch a new attack. His solution didn't eliminate the problem, it potentially created a bigger, more dangerous one. He has made himself and his family vulnerable. The aftermath, living with the consequences. The immediate regret would fester, shaping his future actions and relationships. He might become withdrawn, distancing himself from Carly and scout out of a misplaced sense of being unworthy. He might overcompensate by becoming rigidly moralistic in smaller matters, trying to cleanse himself. The internal conflict between the man he is and the man he wants to be would be more intense than ever. His relationship with Willow would be forever altered, though she would be unaware of why. He might find it difficult to look her in the eye, his guilt coloring every interaction. The hypothetical two things would become a ghost haunting him, a permanent stain on his conscience and a reminder that in the morally complex world of Port Charles, even the most well-intentioned rescue missions can feel like a damnation. In conclusion, while Drew Cain has not actually undertaken such specific actions to secure a non-existent acquittal for Willow Robinson, this exploration demonstrates how the established traits of these characters make such a narrative trajectory not only plausible but deeply resonant with the show's core themes. Drew's history as a soldier and a man with a fractured identity, combined with his protective nature and his current struggle for peace, makes him uniquely susceptible to taking morally gray actions for a righteous cause. Willow's inherent goodness and the purity of her love for her family make her the perfect catalyst for such a crisis of conscience. The real drama in Port Charles is never just about whether someone goes to jail or goes free, it is about the cost of that freedom and the permanent scars left on the souls of those who fight for it. For a man like Drew Cain, winning the battle for Willow's freedom by losing the war for his own soul would be the ultimate, and most immediately regretted, defeat.